want to welcome everyone to this evening's program. Thank you for coming. My name is Ron Lang. I'm the immediate past president of the Elgin Sports Hall of Fame. This program got started because the people at Gail Borden Library decided to put together a series called Reflections on Elgin, 1920s to the 1970s, and asked me if I would be, I'll put the word willing with a question mark, to put together some programs on sports. So that's how this got started. I got going, contacted Mike. Mike was very willing to help out and put this together. Yeah, if you hear noises over there, that's just everything falling. Contacted some of these gentlemen sitting up here, and they were willing to come and participate in this evening. We just thought glory days of Elgin High School in the 50s would be a great program to have. So I'll tell you a little bit more, but that's kind of the genesis of the program tonight. I want to turn it over right now to Mike Bailey, who again was considerate enough to be the moderator for tonight's program. Mike?
This is invigorating. It's not often anymore that I can go somewhere and be one of the youngest people in the room, so I might do this for a living. Thank you. Before we start, seriously, we got a lot of people to thank. We want to do that right away. Jerry Cook from Elgin High School couldn't have been nicer. Allowed us to loan for one day the trophies and some of the memorabilia from some of the teams up there. We really appreciate that. My son, JJ, an Elgin High alum, did the PowerPoint you're going to see here in a few minutes. Ron Lang did a tremendous amount of research, and along with Liz Marston at the Elgin History Museum, they put together a really, really nice program. All this memorabilia and a lot of the things that you'll hear tonight are because of them. And we want to also thank U46. This is where we wanted to have the program. It was in this old gym right here. We didn't want to have it anywhere else. And they agreed and set everything up. So we appreciate that. And I also want to thank the participants, and you're going to hear a little bit more about them in the last hour of the program, but some of them came a couple of states away to be here tonight to be part of this program. That's just wonderful. Okay, so Ron said to me, we need a sports program, and we need a couple of them. What would you like to do? What do you think we should do? And Elgin has a very strong sports tradition, as you know, basketball, football, youth sports, everything. But as I thought about it, there was one thing that stood out in my mind, and that is the decade of the 1950s for Elgin High School has to be the zenith of sports for any school anywhere that I'm aware of. Now, thank these guys. So Elgin High School at that time was the only school in town and had tentacles into every neighborhood. Everybody was part of Elgin High School. Everybody had a son or a daughter that went there, a neighbor, a cousin, a nephew. There was something going on at the school every single night. There were science fairs and plays and concerts, musicals, athletic events. Everybody was connected to Elgin High School. Elgin High School was the nexus of town. Everything revolved around what was going on at Elgin High School. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to take this era of the 50s, because it was sort of the last time that there was that unification in this community. Now, all sports were popular, and when you hear the reason why I picked the 1950s, I'll read you some of these records. All these teams were fantastic, but basketball, far and away, was the heart and soul of Elgin. And if anybody disputes that, I'm sorry, but it absolutely was the heart and soul of Elgin in the 50s. You could not get a ticket into this gym. There was 1,500 to 2,000 people here every single game. 22? Okay, thank you. At least, that's right. And Elgin was part of the Big 8 Conference, which was both Rockfords, both Auroras, Elgin, Joliet, probably the toughest conference in Northern Illinois by far. Now, you would hear all over Elgin, all summer long, you would hear basketballs bouncing as kids wanted to try out for that Elgin High basketball team. During the season, before the season, after the season, people would gather in places like Korn's Barbershop or some of the taverns or some of the clubs, restaurants, and talk about Elgin High basketball. Who they got coming up, who they're going to lose, who's going to play where, what should Ches have done in that game. That was the topic of conversation all over town for the entire year. And these guys that played basketball were the Michael Jordans of their era. everybody in town knew who these guys were, and everybody in town recognized the commitment, the dedication, and the skill that these guys had. So this gym was built about 75 to 80 years ago as part of a referendum, part of the expansion of Elgin High School. And it's built one story below street level. That's one reason why it was called the Pit. But there's another reason why it was the Pit. If you're not familiar with the way things used to be here, the bleachers were on this side all the way down to, this is the out of bounds line right here. The team sat right here. They came down on the other side. And those bleachers ran all the way to the back wall. If you take just a second and turn to your left, and imagine yourself sitting about 5 or 6 rows up, and you tried to see the floor. You couldn't. And that's where the visiting team sat. They sat on that side, and then they sat on that side. And one of the first games I went to in high school was East Aurora. Ernie Cavisto came in with his team, and they were nationally ranked. And all the East Aurora kids at the end were chanting, "We can't see, we can't see, we can't see." And Elgin High taught Ernie a lesson about Elgin High basketball that night. They beat him. So back in the 40s, when John Kraft had the team, that was a golden era also of Elgin High basketball. They finished second, third, and fourth, and he won 178 games in those 10 years before Ches came. The other thing that happened really in the 1950s, and I noticed it some in the 60s when I went here, is if you look underneath that balcony right there, where that gentleman's standing, don't look at him, he's not part of it. Yeah, hello. There were about 3 or 4 rows of bleachers there. And that is where people sat who were mentally ill. And they would, we were certain that they busted in from the mental health center for a little, therapeutic outing. Players would stand, if you notice the black line went right up to where they were sitting. Players would stand there from the opposing team to take the ball out of bounds, and they used to pull the hair on their legs and pull their pants down and talk about, yeah, I'd see Cremines laughing, he knows, he was one of them. No, he wasn't. It was just a horrible place for the opposing team to play. It was a wonderful place for the home team to play. And there was something else that happened here. Every time there was a game, you could not find a seat anywhere you went. First game that I saw was 1963. I've told this story before. I think it was Bob Gilliam and Rivers, I think, was playing. I can't remember all the players. A friend of mine's dad had an extra ticket, and he called me up, said, "Do you want to go to an Elgin High game?" God, yes. We went to the ball game. Elgin won. Afterwards, we went to Leitner's for hamburgers, and I've always said if I died that night, it would have been perfect because that's all I needed to do. That was everything that I needed right there. All right, so one of the reasons why we picked the 50s was just the community, the closeness that Elgin High sports had with the community and the love that the community had for their athletic teams. The other reason is because of what they accomplished, and let me read this to you really quickly. In the 1950s, Elgin won the conference football title in 1955 and 58. They were also undefeated in 55 and 58. Their record in the 50s was 65 and 20. They won conference basketball titles in 1950, 57, 58, 59, and 60. They won regional basketball titles in 1950, 51, 53, 55, 57, 58, 59, and 60. They won sectional basketball titles in 1950, 53, 55, 57, 58, and 60. They finished third in the state in 1950, second in the state in 1955. They won conference wrestling titles in 1957, 1959, 1960. The wrestling team won the sectional title in 1954 and 56. The baseball team won the district championship every year from 1950 to 1960. They also won the sectional title in 1950 and were fourth in the state that year. Talking over here for a few minutes with Gary Kane, I think he said it absolutely perfectly. He's never been around better athletes in all sports in his life. It's hard to imagine what went on in this school in those 10 years. Okay, So it's be pretty hard to argue that Elgin High School in the 1950s had one of the finest programs anywhere in the nation. So tonight we're going to take you through a few things. We've got a PowerPoint presentation, and then we're going to hear from some of the guys that played on those 55, 57 teams and football teams and baseball teams back then. All right, this is the 1949-1950 team on their way to the state tournament. John Kraft is on the left. You see Ches with a hat. And they were actually at that door right up there as they left for a basketball tournament. I think that one was at Huff Stadium in Champaign. And this is the 1950 team after taking third place in the state tournament. A couple of Elgin greats, Ron Weisner and Willard Schultz, were on that team. This is Ron Weisner shooting here. I'll give you a little bit of biographical about him a little bit later on. If you look in the background there, you can see this is in Elgin High's gym. Those windows up there are these here, and you can see the crowd. And you don't see empty seats. And this is the 1955 team coming home from Champaign. Welcome home, Maroons. Paul Hudgens, second from on the bottom row there, second from the right. This is the 1955 team. This is Coach Hudgens. I call him Coach because he was a coach when I came to Elgin High, but that's Coach over there. And that's Chuck Rakow. And, no, I'm sorry, wait a minute, Earl Lamb? Is that?
No, John Schermeyer.
Oh, okay, John Schermeyer, all right, I got the wrong information. Art Green, okay, yeah, Art Green. And this is also the 55 team. This is one of my favorite pictures that Ron dug up. This is over at Aurora.
Okay.
And years ago, basketball wasn't that big a deal, and that's a running track. That was the indoor running track up above where all those people are. You can see that beam hanging down there. It's a little bit of an optical illusion. It's not quite that low, but it's pretty low. And I talked to Coach Hudgens before the game, before the event, and he said that you couldn't shoot a corner shot because you would hit that overhang there. But that's what gyms used to look like. And so you see, if you go back to 1955, this was a really modern facility compared to that.
Is that at east or west?
East? Is that east? East Aurora. This is the 55 team with the sectional championship trophy. This is 56-57. This is the basketball program and also the season ticket information. This is 1957 team. Who was 64 for you guys? That was Sakoti. Okay, Sakoti's in the background here. This is the Elgin Christmas Tournament, 1957. And this is, again, Sakoti in the background. I'm not sure who that is shooting. I can't see a number. I think, Becker again? No. Oh. All right.
He wasn't afraid to shoot.
This is the 58 sectional program. This was Elgin and Marshall. Marshall won the state in 58 and 60, but had to get through Elgin in the super sectional both times. This is the Elgin High wrestling team, 1957. They were also champions. Now this is interesting because back in the 50s and really in the early 60s, swimming was not a big sport. But this was probably one of the greatest swimmers, not just in the history of Elgin High, but in the history of the state of Illinois. Larry Mickelson was undefeated in 3 years of high school varsity and dual meets. He set 21 pool records across the state, 5 individual Big 8 conference titles. He set the IHSA record in a 100-yard breaststroke in 1957 and a 100-yard butterfly in 1958. He was Elgin High School's first 2-time All-American athlete in any sport. He went on to swim at the University of Illinois, where he also set some other records. I think that's Elgin Academy's pool. I think it's their old pool where the History Museum is now. Is that the OY? Okay, could be. Up in the top there are three of the best football coaches that Elgin High ever had. Paul Green, Emery Everett, and Don Coleman, and later on in the late 50s, Bob Duffield. Those four guys ran this football program and were responsible for the record that I read to you, undefeated teams, over 65 wins in 10 years. This was the 58 team down here. The reason that we included this slide is that this is the 1957 sophomore team. They went undefeated. Undefeated in 58, undefeated in 59. They never lost a game. This is some of the starting football players. This is a nice picture here. This was November 14th, 1959. If anybody was here for that game, they'll, yeah, he remembers it. That's right. And Elgin won that ball game. That was when they were undefeated. Is that true? Is that you?
Who was Elgin?
It looks like.
That's probably Raj.
Yeah.
Who was Elgin playing?
Boy, I don't know if I know that.
No. Can't really tell. Looks like one of the Aurora teams.
It's Tom Ailey on the left and Chuck Brandt on the right. You're going to hear a little bit of biographical information on all six of these guys from Ron a little bit later, so I won't get into those. Tom Ailey played in 55 in the team that finished second. He averaged almost 17 points a game, and at the time he had 849 career points. That was number one at Elgin High. Interesting thing, he was also All-State. And the interesting thing about Tom is that he went on to play at Dartmouth College for a guy named Al McGuire. This is Flynn Robinson, known throughout the NBA as Instant Point because he would shoot as soon as he got in the gym. He was the leading scorer on the 57-58 team and the 58-59 team. Played 8 years in the NBA, played with Cincinnati, the Bulls, the Bucks, and the Lakers. And one of his last years was 72 when he was on the Laker team that won 70 games. Ron Wiesner is on the left there, and that's Willard Schultz on the right. Ron earned 10 letters at Elgin High in his 3 years, basketball, football, baseball. Willard Schultz was, I believe, All-State 2 years, and was killed in the Korean War, 1953, July 11th, 1953. The reason that I know that is that Ron and I went to Elgin High to pick up the trophies, and there are just dozens of trophies bolted on the walls all around the school. And one of those is the Willard Schultz Athlete of the Year award or trophy, and it was named for him after he was killed. Irv Johnston, some people remember Irv as a football player, but he was actually an excellent wrestler. He was All-State, All-Conference, I think he won 60 of the 64 matches. Also played football and played football in college as well, or just passed here not too long ago. That's Phil Odle. Phil Odle played for Elgin High, went on to play for BYU, and then played for the Detroit Lions. This is Don Mapes, who a lot of people might remember. Don set just about every record that you could set in football back in the day. He was All-Conference in 51-52, Honorable All-Mention All-State in 51, All-State Halfback 52. Scored 49 touchdowns in his varsity career, went to the state finals in the 100-yard dash and the 880 relay, and still holds some of the records for the Elgin track team. John Kraft on the left. John Kraft won 178 games here and really started the modern tradition of Elgin High basketball. And Glenn Losey, clearly one of the best players that Elgin ever produced. Yes. By no means is this meant to be all the people that played in 1950. There's a lot of other ones, Doug Wallace, Jim Stoll, there's a lot of people that played. But these are just the ones that we managed to pull pictures of.
It's my pleasure this time to introduce these 6 distinguished former athletes, alumni of Elgin High. Paul Hudgens on my extreme left. Paul, of course, was a playmaking guard and co-captain of the Elgin High basketball team in 1955. He was named to the Associated Press All-State Tournament second team. He was a 2-year starter at guard for Elgin High, averaged over 11 points, and led the team in assists. He was most valuable player and athlete of the year his senior year. He went on and played 3 years at Beloit College, where he was also captain his senior year and was elected most valuable player. So again, Mr. Paul Hudgens, who later came back and coached at Elgin High. Next to Paul, Mr. Dick Becker. Dick played varsity football 2 years, played on the undefeated team in 1955, was a starting quarterback as a senior through 14 touchdown passes that year, all-conference honorable mention in football. He was a guard on the 56-57 basketball team, scored a career high of 29 points in a regional game against McHenry, was all-conference first team, named to the Chicago Tribune All-Star basketball team, played basketball at Northwestern for 2 years, Mr. Dick Becker. Mr. Chuck Brandt, unanimous choice for the Big 8 All-Conference team in 56-57. Part of the EHS basketball team that had an undefeated regular season of 21-0. Had a season record of 27-0 until they went into the state finals and were beaten by Heron in the state finals. I should point out, of course, it was Dick, Chuck, Ted, and Gary. All 4 of them were part of that team. That team also won conference, regional, sectional, and super sectionals. Chuck set many of the scoring records, most points in the game, 47, total points in the season at the time, and most free throws in a season. During his senior year, Chuck was Parade Magazine's choice for second team All-American. He was named to all-state teams by Chicago Daily News and Chicago American, also Champaign News Gazette All-State second team. He played at Northwestern University and led the team there in rebounding. So, Mr. Chuck Brandt. Ted Tamaroo, also part of the 1956-57 team, played varsity basketball 2 years, was a starting forward on that team that went 27-1. He averaged over 8 points a game, scored 238 points in that season with a high of 21. So, Mr. Ted Tamaroo. Right next to me is Gary Kane from that same team, class of 57. Played varsity football 2 seasons with a 9.7 yard rushing average his senior season. Named Big 8 All-Conference by the Chicago Tribune, Chicago Sun-Times, and Chicago Daily News Conference Coaches Poll. The All-State selection by the Chicago Tribune and the Champaign News Gazette. All-American recognition by the Wigwam Wise Men of America. Played forward on the 56-57 basketball team with a 13.5-point average. Named All-Conference by the Chicago Tribune, Chicago Sun-Times, Chicago American, and the Conference Coaches Poll. He was an All-State selection by the Champaign News Gazette. Named to the IHSA State All-Tournament Team. Gary Kane. Roger Leonard was the class of 1960. He was an all-around 3-sport athlete at Elgin High. He was a halfback for 2 years on the varsity football team, including 1958 on the undefeated Big 8 champions. He was the most valuable player his senior season. He was a guard for 2 seasons on the varsity basketball team. He was the starting guard on the 1960 team that won Big 8 conference, regional, and sectional, and then ended up losing to Marshall in the super sectional. He was the Chicago Daily Tribune first team All-Conference, Chicago Sun-Times All-Conference. Varsity shortstop, led the team in hitting with a .437 average his senior season. Elgin High School Athlete of the Year his senior year, Mr. Roger Leonard. athlete at Elgin High School, would you please stand? Because there's so many other athletes here, and many who were very outstanding athletes here.
Next, the stars of Elgin High School of the 50s talk about their favorite all-time moment. Now, at times the audio is a little bit hard to understand as it reverberates off the legendary gym walls at Old Elgin High.
As far as the school goes, I remember that I really respected all of our teachers. I thought they were just absolutely tremendous. They all came to the games and they were behind us 100%. As far as basketball goes, we were lucky never to be down 8 in the first place because we had a barn burner against Evanston in the sectional finals. And we were lucky to win that game. And on that Evanston team, let's see, there was Joel Farber, who played at Wisconsin. There was Art McZeer, who played at Loyola. There was a guard who started at the Naval Academy. And it was absolutely a top-notch program. And we were coached by Jack Burmaster. And then the two best players I can remember playing against were certainly Rutledge from Princeton. And then I played, in the summer, I played on an AAU team on Lake Geneva. And we played Sheridan Inn from Peoria, and on the Peoria team was Bobby Joe Mason from Centralia. And let me tell you, that kid could play.
And you mentioned that 55 team, you guys played Princeton. It was like 73-69, plus the Evanston game, I think, was just a point or two. So, like you said, you were fortunate to get that far with that team. In case you don't know, Jack Burmaster was on the 1944 Elgin team that finished second in the state, and then went on to coach for 25 years at Evanston. Chuck or Ted, either one?
I was thinking somebody would mention another game that we had with East Rockford. 16-15. I have a picture back home there with a kid standing with a ball on his hip, and that was a game to remember in its own way. I don't know what else could be said about it, and I think many other teams after that tried the stalling tactics on us, and it didn't work, but that was, I think, a memorable game in many ways. In action.
I remember that as well, and the score, I think, at the end of the first quarter was 5-2, and East Rockford did not attempt a shot the whole first quarter until the time was running out, and there was a few seconds left, and they missed that. But yeah, that was quite a game. I know Coach Chesbrough was really ticked off about them trying to pull that stunt on us. They wouldn't play with us, so
And it ruined my scoring average.
You got 4 points.
I got 4 points. And not only that, we had to go to Moline the next day, and I was horsing around as usual, and Ches says, "You better serious up, we've got a game tonight." And I said, "Oh, do we have a game tonight?" And that was it. He benched me for the first, I think, half. And of course, Teddy looks kind of like me, so he was double teamed the whole first half. So it was interesting.
I know that we haven't said much about the coaching staff in Elgin, and starting with Jack Keeney and going up through Mr. Mickelson, and in junior high school we had Mr. Green, and all of the other coaches that we have had, we were very lucky for it. I played football and basketball both at the University of Michigan, and I know they're getting better, but 50 years ago, the coaching was just compared to, especially Mr. Everett, unbelievable. And I think that's one of the major reasons that we have so many good athletic teams here is the coaching staff. And I just had one thing to say about Coach Chesbrough. He could be spiteful at times, and after the 16-15 game, and we went into the, I think it was the regional, and we were playing Harvard. And the coach at Harvard made a tremendous mistake by saying to a reporter that he knew how to stop this Elgin team because they didn't know what to do if the other team was going to do a full court press. In a way, he was kind of saying that I saw the game, the 6-point game, and Elgin was ahead, and the coach probably really didn't know how to handle that press. So when we went to play Harvard, the final score was 114-55. And if he hadn't taken the rest of us out of the game, I don't even know where the score was going to go. So I always felt sorry for coaches that thought they were going to out-coach Ches.
Sure.
Can I say something about Coach Chesbrough, seeing as I not only played for him, but I coached with him. And there were many times during a practice session I would ask him, well, why do we do this? Why are we doing that? And 9 times out of 10, he would come back to me and say, because that's the way John Kraft did it. So he was a great respecter of John Kraft, who I think never got the credit he really deserved for making this program what it was. Chesbrough was not a great innovator, but he was very well prepared. He had his teams as well prepared as you could possibly get. We had the best scout I've ever seen in Paul Green. We had scouting reports to this day I've never seen their equal. So, and Emory Everett taught me one of the most basic lessons that stood me in good stead all my playing days. That was to look. And when you run up the floor, look back, and when you're going the other way, you look back. And when you got the ball, look into the post. So look. And Emory was a great football coach. I'll tell you another story about Emory. Is I think we have been beaten by Proviso East over at East Aurora. It might have been a super sectional, I'm not sure. But after we walked off the floor after the game, I said to Ches, that team's not going anywhere. And Ches says, I think they're going to win the state title. Well, it turned out they did. And after the game, we went over to Proviso's hotel to say hi to Tom Milliken, who was the coach. And Emory Everett was the athletic director at Proviso West then. And Emory had one too many to drink. He had lost his shoes and was wandering around wondering where his shoes were. But he was a great guy, and I always enjoyed him. Thanks, Mike.
Good story.
Hi guys, a couple of talk about Paul Green. Some of us know Paul Green as principal of Larkin. What was Paul really like as a coach and as an individual?
Everybody was afraid of him. He was a no-nonsense guy. I loved him. I got to know him through church more than any other place. But Paul, let me tell you this about Paul. He was a Marine during World War II. He was a member of Carlson's Raiders, which today I guess would be the equivalent of a Navy SEAL team. And Carlson's Raiders were split into 2 groups in early 1942, and one group went to assault Macon Island, which was actually our first offensive foray in World War II. The other half, including Paul Green, went to Midway Island, and he was part of the Marine detachment that was sent to try to interdict any Japanese invasion that might occur. Well, from there, I know Paul went to Guadalcanal, and after he landed on Guadalcanal, he was leading the patrol of one of the coasts, and he was on point, which means he was out in front of everybody else, and he was shot and wounded. And from there, that was the end of his war experience. But he was a tremendous guy. I loved him.
One thing about Paul Green, he never coached any of the teams that I was on, and I really didn't know him as a coach, but he was the dean of students at Elgin High School when I was here, and his reputation of being a Marine was around the school. And I was working as a page one time, and I saw him handle a guy that came to school with no belt, and pants hanging down. That wasn't the dress code at the time. And he picked this guy up kind of by his throat, slammed him up against the wall, threw him out the door, and said, "When you dress properly, you come back to school. Otherwise, you're out of here." And he didn't look that tough. And he wasn't a big guy, but he was tough. And he had the reputation, and he backed it up.
Any other questions?
I have a question, Mike. If I might start, Gary? Or Gary Fitting? Gary, I have a question. I want to start with you, and anybody can answer this. When you walk into the gymnasium, when you first look around tonight, what's the most vivid memory? What comes rushing back first and foremost? You can answer it, or Chuck, or anybody, or you can all answer.
Without any, for sure, it's the balcony. And the real reason for that was my dad never missed a game. He sat up there without any of his friends. He walked in, took his coat off, crossed his leg, put his coat across and his hat there, and he never changed expression. I could make 100 points, and I would look up at my dad, and he would just be, and that I will never forget.
I got one little, all kinds of things come to mind here. This is all through and even up and through the 70s. We used to, a bunch of the school administrators and I got tied up with it. We'd play basketball in here at noon hour, and even then we were playing fierce 3-on-3 competition. We'd come out of there practically, you know, bloody and sweaty and everything else, and it was just like we're back in high school. But one memory I can always sticks in my mind was early in the season, we got beat by Marshall at the super sectionals, and they went on to win the state championship. But we had seen them earlier in the year, and we had a pretty good scouting report on them. And the deal was drop back and protect the middle. And so that's what we did. We were in a tight zone, dropping back in, and the guard dribbles down, he hits the top of the thing, he stops, shoots, swish. Next time down, same thing, well, swish. Third time down, same thing. Chesbrough, time out. Then we got to change the game plan. And that's what I remember about that. They killed us here in Elgin High Gym. I mean, they just mowed us down, but we didn't have a very good scouting report. And we watched the film set next day, and it just looked like somebody was cranking the film back over and over and over, and same thing, same results. And so anyway, he made a quick adjustment. They didn't score any points from out there, but they got plenty in the middle.
I'm sure many of us have many memories and are more than just sports related. There were also prom dances and all sorts of things here in addition to the sports events. But certainly, when you look back at the basketball games, for me personally, I don't know that any one particular thing stands out, but you clearly remember all the noise and the level of activity in here. And now, somehow, the place looks small. It seemed like it was bigger at that point in time. For sure. But many, many memories, and almost all of them good.
For me, it just feels like home. So many things transpired here besides basketball, assemblies, dances, our graduation. I got a picture of our graduation ceremony. Just feels like home to me.
Yeah, to me, it seems like it's a lot smaller than what I imagined it being. I can remember as a junior, we played LaGrange. They were the defending state champions. They had a center by the name of Ted Kayaza who went on to play at Illinois. And their two guards were returning, and they were rated #1 in the state when we played them. And I think we ended up getting beat 63-57, something like that. But I went one-on-one heads up with one of those guards from that state championship team, and I scored 16 points before I fouled out at the end of the third quarter. So at that point, I felt that I had really arrived as a varsity basketball player. I really felt part of an Elgin team back then. And one fairly humorous story is the next weekend after that, we played Moline here. Moline was rated #2 in the state. In that game, we ended up beating them by 14 or 15 points. They had a big 6'8" center by the name of Tom Reimers. But we were tremendous trash talkers. We were trash talkers before it became the thing that pros do all the time. But we had this center so upset that they threw the ball into him in the post down at that basket. He turned around and made a hook shot, but it ended up at the balcony. Never hit the backboard, never hit the apparatus or anything. So I always remember that.
Didn't miss a game.
Gary Kane, class of 1957.
Okay.
And Roger Leonard, the great class of 1960.
Ted Tamaroo, the class of 1957.
Chuck Brandt, 1957.
Dick Becker, 1957. Paul Hudgens, 55.